Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Daily BALM. I'm your host and the founder of the BALM programs, Beverly Buncher, and I'm really excited to be here tonight with one of our coaches who really epitomizes the importance of getting support and works with many families and treatment centers to help them do just that. And the BALM is the curriculum that she uses to do that. She's brought lots of people into the coach training program and lots of families into the BALM. And she understands the idea of how important support is. Her name is Jill Prevas, a former school nurse and a longtime coach. Jill, tell us, you've been doing BALM coaching now for 5 years, which is pretty amazing. Just for our new people, could you share what brought you to family recovery coaching and why you chose BALM as the curriculum for the families you work with?
Sure. Well, thanks, Bev, for having me on. And yes, I say hello to everybody that's here tonight, too. So what brought me into family recovery coaching was basically what I think brings a lot of coaches into family recovery coaching is because of their personal journey. And so, as Bev said, I had been a high school nurse, was passionate about educating high schoolers on, risky behavior and just, signs and symptoms of things that were out there and what to avoid and bringing in high-end speakers for assemblies. And I also had parenting groups. I did parent education nights, loved teaching parents and bringing up their awareness of, what trends were going on with teens and that sort of thing. And I was the expert. And yet when our daughter was 17 years old, she was a senior in high school, and we found out she was a full-blown heroin addict. And I thought the summer before her senior year, when she was so thin, that there must be an eating disorder going on. Like, that's how much in denial, even though I knew signs and symptoms and all of that, we missed it with our daughter. And so I first, I recognized that power of denial. And so when we found out about our daughter's addiction, I said to my husband, oh my gosh, this is so bigger than us. I said, we really need to listen to the experts, and it's just going to be a journey. And that's exactly what it was. And so we were told, to get her into detox, which we did. We were told, it was in the beginning of December, we were told not to have her come home for Christmas. So, and I know tonight's topic is all about support, but from day one, we started getting support. We were listening to the therapist that she was seeing for the eating disorder. And when she got to treatment, they recommended, you guys need to start doing your own work. They told us to go to Al-Anon. So we started going to Al-Anon. So we started getting support through Al-Anon. We started seeing a therapist ourselves. I got into a women's therapeutic group, through the counselor. So I was getting support in a group setting. And so all of that really helped and paid off in the long run, because it helped my husband and I, get strong and start to see where we needed to make changes to impact not only our own recovery, but her recovery. So in fast forwarding, the good news is, well, a year later, after being in treatment in different venues, she ended up relapsing. But because we got support, even with that relapse, and we were told, whatever you do, don't rescue her, stick to your boundaries. We did that. And so it was a short relapse, and she went back to treatment, and with a scholarship, because by that point we were out of money. And, we continued to use our leverage and stick with their boundaries. And so I'm happy to say, today, in 2020, this all happened in 2008, she's got 9.5 years of uninterrupted sobriety. She works a great 12-step program, and she's got a wonderful life. So when I started, people started getting referred to me, through different. I'm also, my husband and I are volunteer directors of a 12-step ministry at our church. So I was getting referrals from church. I was getting referrals from this therapist we were seeing, the 12-step kind of Al-Anon type calls. And I had already left school nursing to become a health coach. So I already believed in coaching and knew that I was having an impact with people around health and wellness and weight management and stuff. But I really had this passion and a calling from my higher power to do something with families. And I was very fortunate that I found you, Bev, and that I found the coaching school. And, you know, when I heard about it, I was all over it and said, this is what I really want to do, to be able to be there and help families.
But there are lots of coaching schools. Why this one?
Well, what I loved was the BALM model just made so much sense to me. You know, when you told me, you know, we're going to help teach you, because I was the coaching student going through it, you know, and we're going to be teaching families. I'm going to learn the skills to teach families how to be that loving mirror, how to be that love and the peace that they wish to see in their loved one, but also within themselves. And I know how much work that took for my husband and I. And so I felt like, you know, the BALM is just another avenue of support for families. And then I started seeing the transformation, even as a coaching student within myself. I was using the BALM in so many other areas of my life. Our daughter was doing well, but I was using it, you know, in conversations with my mother to get into senior living, and using it, you know, in other areas of communication. The other huge thing that I love about the BALM, and I know, you know, most of the people that I bring into the BALM as my clients, is that there is a curriculum, you know, that there's support, not only if people hire me to be their coach, but there's curriculum that they get to follow. And then there's this whole online community. I mean, we're seeing that tonight, that there's a community, there's families getting on and being able to be together and not feel alone. And there's no other company out there, there's no other program out there like this. And that excited me, and it still does.
So yeah, it's so wonderful to share this journey with you, Jill. I've just seen your growth and how much you're helping families, and thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Jill, you know, you mentioned when we were talking about this call how essential support is, but that recovery is so much more than support for families. And of course, in the BALM, we talk about information, transformation, and support. Could you talk about why you feel it has to be more than support?
Because, well, support is good, but there needs to be that internal transformation. Well, first off, there needs to be the education part, you know, the information part, and really understanding that, you know, substance use disorder is a disease. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not a moral failure, that it's not something that your loved one should just be able to stop. So being able to get that education in, the educational piece about what this whole recovery journey is going to look like. You know, I love in Principle 1, we have that wonderful interview, you know, that you do with Alan, your husband, who's in recovery, and he talks about the importance of the first 90 days. And so family members, when your loved one gets into treatment, you know, yeah, we're going to be there for support, but families need to understand their role when their loved one's in treatment, that it's not just that they're advocating for their needs. We don't want them doing that. We want them advocating for their recovery. And so just learning that and learning it at their core, because all of this is so important, because that's when their loved one is going to start seeing the changes in their family. And then they're not going to be able to manipulate and use all of their strategies that they used to use that actually worked in a very unhealthy way. So there's the information part, then that transformation part, and that's our 7 C's. I mean, not our 7 C's, but our 7 steps. We're teaching families, how do you have the conversation? how do you help your loved one get out of that place of denial? Families aren't in denial when they come on board and they join the BALM, or they wouldn't be joining the BALM, but then their loved one is in denial. So, and getting in touch with your own emotions so that you're not, as a family member, making really important decisions, without making them in that place of fear or judgment or shame or resentment, all those negative fears those negative emotions that come along with addiction.
Right. Jill, one of the things that I find so exciting is every time a family gets it, that they move, because people go in and out. The stages of change, the developmental levels, they're fluid. So a family will come in and they get it. I'll do anything. And then their loved one hits them with guilt and back on the floor again. Why are leverage and boundaries so important to learn how to use for families?
Well, I think the first thing is understanding as a family member what's the difference between leverage and boundaries, because a lot of people get them confused. And so if you're new, leverage is something that you have that's important to your loved one that you can use to help to get them, to the level of their stages of change, to move into a healthy place of, action. So a great example would be the car, or the cell phone. But a boundary, and this is where I think a lot of people confuse, is a boundary is not to change somebody's behavior. A boundary is for your own safety. And so being able to really look at, okay, well, where am I feeling unsafe in dealing with my loved one? And what kind of boundaries do I need to put in place? But the most important thing about setting a healthy boundary is, first off, setting it with the right motive, the right healthy motive, that it's for you and it's not to manipulate or try and change their behavior, but also knowing that you can carry that boundary out and enforce that boundary. And that is where support comes into play so often. Because when it really comes down to, I'm working with a family right now, and her daughter, it looks like, is going to get kicked out of sober living. And they have the boundary because she has been in several sober living homes, that this time she's on her own. And
That's hard stuff.
Yeah, it is tough, but they're at that place
Hard for the family.
It's hard for the family. And so the good news is they're reaching out to me. We had a laser call, and we're really, I'm helping them, and, they're being reminded of what their boundary is and the importance of setting that. Because if you give in on that boundary that you've set, you take steps backwards, and you have to work so much harder to regain that.
Right. So we know that we're not about tough love in the BALM. Yep. And yet there comes a time when a boundary may have to be set. And it's really for self-protection, for family protection, that you do that. And yet we don't just leave someone. It's sort of like, sweetheart, if you do this again, you will not be able to come home. Here are some other options for you. So it's loving, it's not punitive. But we also say in Principle 7, don't set a boundary until you're determined to stick to it. Why do you think in the BALM, this is a Principle 7 principle, boundaries? And why don't we just, boundaries, everybody who comes from treatment center says, the treatment center says I have to make boundaries. Meanwhile, they're not even talking about what we call boundaries, but in essence, it looks the same. But why do you think it's so hard for families to set boundaries? And why do we put it further along?
Why do we put it as Principle 7
and not Principle 1 or 2?
1, yeah. because number one, it's important for families to have the education piece to really understand what's going on with their loved one, what's going on with their brain, and but also what's going on within them. You know,
Mhm.
principle two, which is the stages of change. And so it's important for families to know where they are in their stages of change, because maybe they're still not really sure if their loved one has a full-blown substance use disorder, you know, to even be setting a boundary of what the next step is going to be. And also learning all of the ways that family members have been enabling, you know, with hovering and the micromanaging and, you know, the lecturing and all the things that we think we're helping our loved one with when we're actually harming them. And it's
Mhm.
another form of enabling. So once families understand all those concepts, I think it makes it easier to be able to set the boundaries.
And
Um,
yet we encourage families to get coaches. If it's going to be easier by Principle 7, why do we say it's so important to get a coach, especially so you have one when you're going through these crises?
because a coach helps to offer that additional layer of support. You know, I mean, the wonderful thing is, you know, just in the BALM Comprehensive, the 1-year program, you know, families, and you guys know you're on this tonight. We have live calls. We've got this call. We have the 12 o'clock noon Eastern time call. We have group coaching. We have journaling. And those are all great. But a lot of times it's having that extra layer. It's having that person to reach out to for that laser call, like today, when this family looks like there's going to be a tough conversation that's going to come up. And so also in setting that boundary, because that's part of the 7 steps, it's stating the facts. Okay, so why are we at this place, loved one, that we're now saying, because believe me, they've set, I'll call it a softer boundaries. They've set them in the past and they're not working. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they're at that point where they need this for their emotional recovery
Mm-hmm.
because it's just being so drawn out.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll never forget the parent who was literally having a heart attack from her daughter's using. And her heart doctor said, "You've got to get her out of your life right now or you're going to die." And
Mhm.
her daughter was using and she was letting her in the home at all the parties and loving on her. And it was killing her.
Mhm.
We're not against love, but we are not in favor of you being fine and us being, you know, like the giving tree. That's really not the balm. The balm is the tree grows and the child sits next to the tree, maybe in a branch, but not cutting it down. And that's, you know, the giving tree is really essentially what happens when you have a child with addiction. You just keep giving and giving and giving and giving until you're so depleted. And it's so
And
hard for, go ahead.
it is. Well, there's something else that was coming up. It's like with the BALM Principle 7 for boundaries, I think, you know, it doesn't take long for the loved one when somebody really dives into the BALM program and really starts working it, for the loved one to start to see some major changes taking place. And so it's almost like the family starts to gain a level of respect back. There's a level of posture that a family member starts to have, and the loved one starts to be like, oh my gosh, there's something different. It's almost like when our daughter found out we were going to Al-Anon, she was really mad. And she loves to share that when we go out and share our family stories. She said, I was mad because I knew I wasn't going to be able to manipulate my parents anymore. And so when you get to Principle 7 and you're really focusing on your boundaries, I think they take it, they just know that you mean business.
Right, right. So How can having support help a family member stay out of denial?
Well, it helps family members look at the facts of what's going on in their life, because it is very easy to go into denial, especially, well, first off, at the very beginning. Okay, well, do they really have a problem? Do they really need to be in treatment? But the other thing is once they get into treatment, a lot of times I see families fall back into denial because they think, okay, this is the be all and end all, and we finally got them into treatment. We've been wanting them to go to treatment for so long. And then it's easy to fall back into denial of they're going to be okay now. And they're going to get to come home and we're going to have this great life now.
It's going to be great.
Yes. And so by getting support, it's especially if you're working with a coach and as you're going through all the different, especially that first year, because then they come out of, probably a 30-day, and then they're stepping down to, partial hospitalization or intensive outpatient or whatever. It's really important. That's when the hard work comes in for family members, because their loved one isn't in the safe cocoon anymore. They're now starting to deal with, number one, they're dealing with emotions that they haven't felt for maybe years. And they don't know what to do with them. And they're also really good. If we would have listened to our daughter even 60 days into treatment, she was very convincing that she was ready to come home. She said, I get it. I'm going to go to AA meetings. I'm going to get a sponsor. And we were thinking, oh, yeah, she gets it. But all it took was a professional.
Let's really talk about this, okay?
Okay.
Because who among us has not loved someone who has said this? I'm okay now. Listen, maybe they haven't gone through treatment. I want to handle this on my own. I've gone through a lot of treatment centers, and now it's time for me to handle it on my own. Imagine your loved one with a heart condition or diabetes saying to you, listen, I got this. These needles they're giving me for my diabetes, I'm throwing them out. I'm going to take care of this myself. See this breathing thing that I have on because of my CHF or whatever it's called, congestive heart failure. I'm not going to wear the oxygen anymore. And we would just say, yeah, you are, or at least we would know that they're wrong. I mean, someone can make a decision that they just want to die. People do that. Usually older people, they can take off they cannot continue. But we're talking about family members who are often young and are making decisions that their disordered brain cannot handle. And we don't have to feel guilty about taking an active role and getting help. In fact, it is our responsibility. Remember, in the BALM, we get our lives back and help our loved ones get theirs back. We don't say, that's their problem when they're having psychotic breaks because of marijuana use. It's a psychotic break. They can't make a decision. This is so hard because our society is all about the individual. Grown-ups get to make their own decisions. When you have a family member who's as impaired as some of our loved ones are, they really need our help. Do you think I'm on track here, Jill, or would you just...
You were totally on track, because as we learn and, as you get educated that with this disease, that their neuropathways have been hijacked. And, it takes a good year, if not 3 or 5 years, for their brains, for their neuropathways to get back on track. Right. And then if you throw some relapses in there, then that's just slowing that process down. Right. So, absolutely on track.
Right. So what about leverage? You know, we say that you apply leverage to help motivate someone. And yet we also say, don't attempt it by yourself. Do it in the context of your treatment team, with your coach, with the professional. Why are these pieces so important? And why indeed is leverage so important?
Well, leverage gives you something to work with. You know,
And maybe define leverage for somebody who may not know.
Okay, so leverage, leverage is when you have something that's important to your loved one that they want. So, like I'd stated earlier, it could be the car, it could be the leverage if they are going to come back eventually to live with you, or the leverage of money that, you know, you are willing to support them financially, you know, until they, you know, get their job, or, you know, you've got something that's going to be able to help them, or that they need. You've got something that they need.
So they could be more willing or motivated to do what's
Exactly.
best for them.
Yep.
And sometimes we think we know what's best for them, but it's good to work with the professionals, especially in early recovery, so that we don't get confused by the chaos in our family, which is very easy to have happen. There's no judgment there in saying that.
Yeah, and I mean, because sometimes it's, you know, as a family, we might think it's good for them to come back and live with us. You know, and for us, it was highly recommended by the professional that she not come live with us. Support around that.
It's a really hard one. Everybody hear this. If you have a loved one who's in the hospital, in treatment, wherever they are, and they want to come home and live with you, think twice. Think 3 times. Talk to your coach, talk to the professionals. And if they're saying, do your best to go with the professional advice. You know, we have a line in BALM, sweetheart, we're going to listen to the professionals. We've been doing it our way all these years, and it really hasn't gotten us where we want to go. Would you agree? And, you know, it's just loving, matter of fact, this is how we do it now.
Yeah, because what happens is if they come back too soon, and you as a family member, if you're not in a healthy place and really done your work and really know what those internal triggers are for yourself, it's so easy. It is so easy to just fall back into the old patterns of was before.
Right.
And then it makes it doubly hard to set the boundaries.
So I read something, one of our wonderful BALM family members shared this with me, that another family support group out there, who I will not name, just started working with parents of adults and wrote, once your child turns 18, do not suggest treatment, put them in treatment. It's their decision. What would you say to that, Jill, as a BALM coach?
Well, I would say once your child turns 18, chances are they probably started using around 14, 13, 15. So number one, emotionally, their brains have stopped developing at whatever age they started using. So you probably have somebody at the emotional level of a 14 or 15-year-old making a decision about what their next step should be. Also, we know that the frontal lobe of the brain, which is where you rationalize and you can reason, the frontal lobe does not close. They don't have the ability to do that until around age 24, 25. And guys are usually a year later than girls. So just those 2 reasons, like physiologically, I would say I totally don't agree with that. And once again, an 18-year-old probably doesn't have the financial means to be making the types of decisions that are going to be able to even allow them to get the kind of treatment that they need. And if there is health insurance, then, you know, the family member is most likely paying for that health insurance. So you got leverage right there. So I totally disagree with that statement.
Right. It's against everything we teach in the BALM.
Yep. Yes.
When you have someone who's sick and that sickness is in their brain, you know, it's just very, well, bad advice to let them
Well,
go
and
on.
also the average 18-year-old still looks at it as, I'll deal with it later. I'm still right now experimenting. You know, I'll wait until I'm in my later 20s, and if I need treatment, then I'll go get it. But I got it under control now because that's just where they think that every 18-year-old is going to party.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is they're still in their level of denial. And it takes the family to really continue to focus on the facts of what got them there and then what, you know, where they're going with their treatment.
Right. Right. You know, there's a lot of love and connection in the BALM, but we're being very strong-minded right now. And yet, the more we practice BALM, the less judgment we have. And I guess my question is, how does getting support help us to be strong when we need to, but also to let go of judgment?
In a lot of ways, you know, and I'll just bring it back to my own personal story too, which helped me so much. It really helped when I was sitting in a treatment center. My husband and I were sitting in a counseling session with our daughter, and she just was, all of her anger was being directed at me. And I was taking it personally. And I was getting upset. The therapist could see it. And the therapist basically asked our daughter to leave the room. And then when she left the room and the therapist looked at me and she said, "That is not your daughter speaking. That is her disease speaking." And it was like, that was a brain shift for me. And that helped tremendously. And I'm getting chills when I say it because it helped to remove all the judgment. Because I was still judging her as, we've done all this stuff for you, and I can't believe we're here, and we've had this wonderful, you know, we've stayed married, and, you know, we had volleyball, and, you know, you had all these dreams, and really they were my dreams. But so that helped a lot with the judgment part. I think also just with the nature of the disease, and if there are relapses in there and stuff, it's really hard to not go back to judgment. And when you're judging your loved one, it's not helping anybody. It's just making matters worse because they already have judgment and shame going on within them. And so as a family member, and that's why we teach, you know, so emphatically in the 7 steps with the 3rd step of really getting in touch with your own emotions. And judgment is one of them. And so support helps tremendously in, you know, helping you to not be in denial if you do have judgment going on. And I know my daughter shared one time, it's actually on one of the interviews, one of the recorded BALM interviews, where at the end she said, you know, parents, if you're judging your child, your adult child or whatever, they're going to know it. Even if you're not like outwardly, they can pick up on that. It's just a vibe that you're putting out there.
So true. It's so true. So we're inviting families to not judge, to be loving, to be firm when necessary. And this takes work. what do you feel, if we just talk about the BALM 1-year program, what would you say is the most important piece of that to learn all of this?
The most important piece of the entire 1-year program? That's kind of hard, Bev.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, do you think there's any one piece of the 1-year program that does it for people? Or do you think it's just the whole thing? I mean, what is your sense?
I think it's the whole thing. I think I think first off, it's utilizing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting on, it's being proactive. It's called being a student of the BALM, because you're not going to learn this stuff just by osmosis. So that means getting on the live calls if you can. And I think live calls are really good because you get, we're going to open the lines up and people are going to have time to talk. So that's good. And then, once you get comfortable and you go through the first 4 principles, then sign up as soon as you can for the 7 steps, because that's the transformation. Who doesn't want a transformation? I wanted a transformation. I didn't want to be showing up as the mother that I was. I knew I'd heard in Al-Anon that, yeah, I contributed to her disease. So I wanted to see what I needed to do to not contribute. In the BALM, we say, yeah, you can contribute, but we want to teach you how to contribute to their recovery. And so you've invested the money, and it's just as important to invest the time so that you learn how to contribute to your loved one's recovery.
So, Jill, you didn't have the BALM, and yet you had the transformation. What if somebody's just on this call tonight visiting and they're not choosing the BALM? What do you say to them? Why should they have to? And what do they need to do if they're not going to do the BALM? And why would they do the BALM when they can just do what you did?
Okay, so if we answer the question, if they're not going to do the BALM, then get into some kind of support or groups. Go to Al-Anon, go to Nor-Anon, go to Codependence Anonymous, go to something where you're going to be in community. It's crucial, but also at the same time, be selective. A lot of people say, I don't want to go to Al-Anon. I don't want to sit and listen, or Nor-Anon, and people complaining. Well, if you're in a meeting and you're hearing everybody stuck in the problem, then that's not the meeting for you. Go to 6 meetings before you decide what is for you. So find the healthy ones that are focusing on a solution, and where you walk out of there feeling better than when you walked in. You walk out of there feeling worse, then that's not a healthy meeting. The
and
others
for people who are in the BALM, when you study Principle 8, you can go back and listen to the lesson. We give about 10 or 12 different kinds of support for families to pursue in addition to the BALM. So we know we're not the only thing in town. We know, though, that people need a lot of different things. Go ahead.
Right. The other thing, this was big for me. It was important for me to get my own individual therapy because I didn't know how my unresolved childhood issues were triggering me to react to my daughter. And I had a lot of emotional pain as a child growing up. And so I thought my job was to make sure my daughter didn't have any emotional pain. If I did that, I was doing a really good job as a mother. And so I was making decisions based on that. How would she feel about it? Like I had to learn to take the feelings out. And that's where support comes in too, because I was then able with support to get a more objective answer and objective guidance on the direction that I should go. But once I realized, oh my gosh, I have fear of abandonment issues. So I'm afraid that I don't want my daughter to abandon me. Like I was making unhealthy decisions based on that. Mm-hmm. So healing came along. And once I realized too, I was told by the therapist when they said, she shouldn't come back and live with you. And they said, ever again. I mean, it wasn't like, but I listened to that. My husband and I listened to that. But what that required, I needed to give myself space to grieve and really grieve that this is not going to look the way that I thought it was going to look. But it was the best advice and support that I could have gotten. And my daughter to this day will say that, but I couldn't have done that without some, the therapist, suggesting that. So that would be for people who are just on tonight, just listening. If you are in the BALM and you're wondering, well, why should I do the BALM? Like, why it be, first off, I can say because it works. And I know that it works because there's family members on here now. I'm looking at who's here, and I know there's family members on here that it has worked beautifully. Maybe their loved one isn't exactly where they would like them to be, but they've gotten their lives back. And if you want to speed up the process, this is a way. If you dive into the BALM and you start practicing and you start utilizing what you're learning, it will speed up the process. Maybe not for your loved one, but for your own peace and serenity.
Right.
And
but what about somebody who's trying to figure out, I'm not in the BALM, should I do it? I mean, do you think you would have done it if you'd known about it? Do you think it would have made a difference? Or do you think you don't know because this is, you had a good path?
No, I can say I absolutely positively would have done it. Because just my mindset, I knew enough as being a professional by working as a nurse, in a high school setting, that we were dealing with a life and death situation. And so I wanted to, any kind of resources that came my way that seemed like a good fit, I wanted to be part of that. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, I would have signed up for the BALM. I would have been all over it. And now that I get to do this professionally and work with so many family members, I mean, I'm just passionate. When you ask me, to come on and talk about support, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm all over that.
Right. Because so you put all of your families into the BALM, don't you?
I do.
All of your coaching families.
Yeah, I won't work with a family unless they enroll in the BALM. Because we would end up wasting so much coaching time with me educating when it's all right there for you. The other thing is you have family recovery at your fingertips 24/7. We have such an amazing database of recorded calls to be able to listen to other families that have gone through this and now they're in a good place, or to listen to the loved one talk about how much it helped their recovery when their family started using the BALM. Those are messages of hope. And when you're dealing with active addiction, it's really hard to stay in that place of hope.
Right. You said before, go to the meetings that have solutions. That's what I love about our program, that it's totally solution focused. People come into classes and if they start just chatting or venting in a classroom setting about their problem, we'll let them talk a little bit, but we say, now let's go to the solution. We're really about the solution. Why is that so important?
Well, because who wants to stay stuck in a problem? It states in the big book, it states when you are in the problem, if you want to live in the problem, it's just going to keep getting bigger. So we all know there's a problem, with substance disorder. If we know that in the family, then why do we want to stay stuck in that place of pain and resentment and anger and shame when there's a solution that can help move you forward and hopefully it'll help your loved one want to move forward with you.
Right. We see when families get in, it doesn't mean there aren't any relapses or reoccurrences, whatever you choose to call it, but often they get shorter and shorter and shorter. Why is that, in your opinion, for BALM families? And how can support help with that?
So why that is for BALM families is, number one, it's giving the families a place to come and get support immediately. Okay, a coach, they're going to get it by reaching out to their coach. If they don't have it, if they're just in the BALM comprehensive, they can get onto a call as soon as possible, but they also can start listening to recorded calls and get reminded, okay, I just listened to that story and their loved one had a relapse and this is what they did because they just listened to it in 7 around boundaries. But I think for families, if they're working with a coach, if there's a relapse, usually there needs to be some type of action plan put together. Are they out of treatment? If they've relapsed and they're out of treatment, what is that next step going to look like? Coaches, we all have networks that we work with, and we have just a big amount of resources available to us to help give that direction. Because I remember when our daughter relapsed, it was harder than when we first found out about her addiction. Emotionally, I was emotionally raw. And so when you've got a loved one that's relapsed, you need to move quickly. And that's also another reminder when you get support. It's like, let's move quickly. Let's not wait on this because, before it turns into a habit again, and then they have to go back into detox and all of that. So that answer?
Yes. And we want to open this up, but I just want to say one more thing. Sometimes a family comes into the BALM and they get a coach and they go through all the motions, but the coach will say, let's talk about leverage. Oh, you're always saying leverage, or let's do X. Oh, please, I don't do that. How do you help a family get from point A of their own resistance into their own recovery? And what do you do when they just are resistant, the family resistant?
Well, families have their own stages of change, just like teach for loved ones. So my job as a coach is to kind of meet them where they are, but also to start asking those open-ended questions of, well, what are they looking for? And then together, hopefully, the solutions will start to come up.
Right.
Really coach around what's underneath that resistance. A lot of times it's fear. And so how do we work through helping to work through and step out of that fear into a place of moving forward? Yes.
Jill, you're the penultimate BALM coach, as many of our coaches are. You are a wonderful coach, a wonderful BALM coach, and the BALM and a coach are a great combination. If someone can't have both, where would you invite them to start?
To join the BALM Comprehensive.
Okay. Why?
Versus just getting a coach, because you're getting 1 year of unbelievable support. You have access to taking the 7 steps class. You have access to, what's that?
Over and over, 8 times.
Over and over, you do, yeah. You have access to the live calls. You have access to group coaching twice a week. You have access to journaling. Journaling is huge. I can't imagine going through my journey without the gift of journaling. There's a meditation call on Fridays, and we're teaching you the skills that you need of how to get quiet, how to get still. You're going to get all of that in the BALM Comprehensive. But getting a coach helps to pull it all together a lot quicker. And start
what we say is that a coach is an accelerator. Getting a coach accelerates the whole process. So we invite people, if at all possible, and we do have sliding scales for families. And we have coaches at all levels who are available. We have coaches who are brand new. They're still interning. They've learned a lot in the BALM and in other aspects of their life. And now they're starting to coach families. They may not be at the top of their game yet, but they know the BALM and they're moving it forward. And then we have coaches like Jill, who are veterans, experts in the BALM and in life coaching. And we're very excited about the kind of support we offer. And we know there's so much out there in support. But our thing is information, transformation, and support. Educate yourself with as much information as you can get. Go through a transformation process that will help deal with your trauma triggers, because trauma triggers can push you back like that. And the BALM first 3 steps are all about removing those trauma triggers so that as you practice more and more, you can just move through difficult things with much greater peace. Thank you again, Jill, and thank you, everyone. And remember, everybody, be a loving mirror. Bye.